This is my question. And I started to speak. All right, folks. Welcome back. So welcome to all of you who are continuing to serve, and thank you very much for those of you who are new. Before we get going, I just want to have a note. Apologize for the delay, and if you're joining us online, we do have to apologize because unfortunately we just realized that since we've transitioned away from Zoom and folks joining us online have a Zoom link, since that's now a free account, that's going to time out at about I think the 40-minute mark, 45-minute mark, something like that. But we will get that fixed. We'll figure out a different process for our next meeting. But with that, we'll go ahead and call things to order and start with the roll call.
Okay, and as with all things at the start of our academic year and our first meeting, there may have been changes to membership that I'm unaware of. And if that's the case, then let me know. If I don't call your name, then just see me after our meeting or send me an email and let me know that you should be included. And if I do call your name, but you're serving for somebody else now, or you have other information you need to tell me, then feel free to let me know after the meeting or in an email. Sound good? All right. Alan. Here. Bella. Here. Burgile.
Here.
Boyd.
Here.
Brock.
Here.
Brian.
Here.
Luzon.
Here.
Chet.
Here.
Collie.
Here.
Council.
Here.
Dyer.
Here.
Elias.
Here.
Ellison.
Here.
Elman.
Here.
Fawcett. Fleming.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Griffin.
Here.
Hadley.
Here.
Hart.
Here.
Hildebrand.
Here.
Hopper.
Here.
Ivory.
Here.
Jansen. Kazim.
Here.
Khan.
Here.
Kimbrell.
Here.
Kozaks.
Here.
Maggiano.
Here.
Matthews.
Right.
Mendes.
Here.
Moon.
Here.
Afoe.
Here.
Peralta.
Here.
Pacquiao. Riker. Roberts.
Here.
Ruffin.
Here.
Song. Shelnut.
Here.
Siciliano. Swift.
Here.
Talbot.
Here.
Viswanath.
Here.
Webb.
Here.
Wentz.
Here.
Yay.
Here.
Yarborough.
Here.
Yay.
Here.
Sot. Wow.
Thank you all. So minutes have been approved electronically. Thank you for that. So go ahead and move into what is now our discussion with leadership. So I'd like to welcome and go ahead and introduce our President Johnson.
Thank you. How's everyone doing today? Day 49. Those of you that are counting. So I'm still learning, listening. I've been walking around. I know I didn't get around to some of the department meetings. Certainly need to have a conversation with the provost and the deans about what's the best time for you. Obviously, I don't want to intrude. I don't know if any of you have visited your classes, but I've been visiting freshman classes over the last couple of weeks of school, talking with those students, letting them know that There are about 1,200 faculty and staff here that are committed to their success, and letting them know, where those resources are at. And then, of course, giving them my email address so that if they have any questions or they're not getting responses, that they're free to email me so that we can help them. Obviously, the big push there from a student success purposes is I don't want them to drop out under the false belief that no one here cares about their success. But I will tell you that I tell them that I can't change their grade, that I can't get rid of their parking ticket, and I can't, of course, make their significant other listen to them. So there are certain limitations on what I can and cannot control. To that end, of course, for those of you at the federal level, realize that we're about 15 days, actually less, for this, I guess, resolution on the budget runs out. And so, of course, we're trying to get that through. There's been a lot of stuff going on in the higher education space as they look to defund some of the Department of Education. Right now, Pell Grant seems to be holding. There's some other funding like TRIO and other student success measures that are on the chopping block. A lot of that doesn't impact us here. So obviously Pell is a big piece of it since 40% of our students are first generation college students. Moving on down to the state level, obviously, we're getting close to the start of a new legislative session. And so as that begins, things will start picking up. Any legislation that was not decided on last session is obviously free to come forward with minor changes. And so we'll continue to keep an eye on that from the system level and anything that it has impact on us here at the local level. With that, a number of our local state legislators are up for re-election. And so you may see their signage and whatnot. Of course, as citizens, you're certainly welcome to go to any of those events that you want to, but I just remind you from the perception of speaking as a citizen versus as a representative of the University of West Georgia, that you're mindful of those two roles and that you don't cross over in that to speak on behalf of the university at political events. Locally, and I'm sure the provost will get into it a little bit more from an enrollment management perspective, but if you haven't noticed, there's a lot more students on campus. Enrollment is up. Well, I think last year we had record-breaking enrollment, about 14,400, if memory serves. And right now we're sitting just slightly over 16,000. Huge effort to our enrollment team for making phone calls, getting students who hadn't paid their bills and other stuff to register for those that had gotten dropped. Clearly, the graduate school and the work that they did to get our graduate students who had also dealt with some of those issues. Housing doing their part to get students who needed to be into housing, which is also up. Our occupancy is around 72%. So we have about 2,800 beds, give or take. I think we're around 2,400 students in those. Huge piece of that is, of course, freshmen have to live in the residence hall. Certain restrictions apply, but that number has certainly increased. And so I think that's helpful. Clearly, the work of the provost's office and getting the course scheduling to a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday schedule has allowed more students to be on campus. And I think that has impacted student life. My charge to the VP of Student Affairs is to be, how are we engaging students? How are we keeping them on campus? What does that do? And then, of course, from a data perspective, how is residents' life impacting graduation rates, retention, and other factors so that we can see, are we doing the things that we need to do? And of course, the other advantage to having those students on campus is if you're not following, we are currently undefeated in football. I don't want to say it's the Johnson era, but I'm going to go ahead and take the credit. So we're ranked 22 for those of you that are tracking that. And so I encourage you to come out to the game tomorrow. We had a pretty robust crowd last weekend. It was a nail biter right at the end. I didn't realize it was going to be quite a heart attack game there in that last couple of minutes, but they pulled it off in the fourth quarter. And so I certainly encourage you to get out there and root on our football program. At this time, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. That's just a general overview from federal, state, and local level. I still have about another 45 days or so before we all come back together for my State of the University address, which is scheduled for November 6th, I believe. You should have received an email here, I believe, this week. I still continue to look for your feedback and thoughts if you see me. But other than that, again, I'm happy to answer your questions.
question is the comment. This upcoming football game is Falcons Appreciation Day. All faculty members can get in for free and will receive up to 3 tickets. This is the university.
We'll see. Faculty appreciation. It's also wear blue, for the game. Yes, ma'am.
For your address, I know it overlaps with part of some class times. I know you want people there in person, but it would be nice if the link could be sent for those that are like, when they catch the end of it or something.
Yes, absolutely.
If you're open to that, that'd be nice.
Everyone hear the question? Yeah, so absolutely, I have asked if it's gonna be live streamed, and so certainly the recording could be, stay up on the site or whatnot, so people can watch it out. But, yes, ma'am.
Because on Tuesday, Thursdays. Scheduled due to the council meetings and everything, so a lot of people don't have. Call, so it be changing, because that's not my suggestion, my colleagues suggested.
I'm not opposed to that. I didn't set the time block. I think we were conscious of obviously some lunch issues and whatnot, because the, conversation will usually take about 45, 50 minutes or so. And so, it's certainly finish up at noon. So yeah, I can certainly bring that back to the group.
I want to offer thanks that I've heard my colleagues discuss. They were happy to have the opportunity to share in the survey their thoughts on UWG, so thank you for sending that out. And then I'm asking for a sneak peek, if you're willing. Have you had a chance to look at some of our responses, and do you have any big themes that have emerged or polls? And if you would rather say that for the address.
Yeah, I don't want to give it all away, but I don't know if you know, but a lot of complaints about parking. No. I think obviously, the faculty the group in general, just about the interaction, student size of the classrooms, just trying to keep that at the forefront of the conversation. I think student success and what we could be doing better. I think there were some questions, about athletics, which of course is D1. And so I think I would say there's some themes that are emerging, but we still haven't gone through all of it. And some of that is the way that it was sent out and the survey could have been done in a different format. So it makes it a little bit more difficult, but that was kind of before I came on board. I just said, this is what I want to do. Of course, if I was running as a researcher, I would have pursued it a different way. But hey, these are lessons learned from our marketing communications team. No, I think, there's a lot of good stuff that we're doing right. I won't say, I've only been here 45 days. I think with any organization, and as we have conversations, and I'm certainly happy to have more of those, is that everybody loves change as long as it doesn't impact them. But I think that, we can continue to improve, and that isn't to say that we were doing it wrong by any means. But I think that as you look at higher education and the landscape as it is, as you look at the state's expectations from accountability perspective that's placed on higher education, the resources that are given to the university, it's just making sure that we're in line with those expectations, how we're doing, our mission to serve the region, having those conversations, with our community partners, obviously our students, and I think we can all agree that student success, should be a no excuse priority. I don't think anybody's going to be like, no, I think, we should put all of our money into whatever. But I also, same thing with college athletics. I think it's a priority. We made that a mission, that was before my time, but that's the thing. But as I spoke with the leadership team last week, it's a branding and visibility opportunity for the organization, but not at the expense of the academic mission of the organization. As a leader, you have to, just like a department chair or the dean, you have to use your resources and decide where they're going. And one of the things that I certainly promised, I told the provost, I told the athletic director, is that when you look at tuition dollars that come into the university, both formula funding and cash from students' tuition, is that roughly nationally, about 65 to 70% of every tuition dollar goes to support the academic mission. And then the remaining amount, goes to support the administration side. So I know there's always concern about administrative bloat, or there's concern about, athletic funding or whatever, right? I came from the University of Houston, where we started out about $16 million in subsidies to athletics. And when I left, we were about $42 million, right? So I certainly can understand how that number creep continues to go up there. But at the same time, those dollar amounts came out of the administration budget side, right? There was, I'll say, a firewall for practical purposes. So there was never money taken from academics to support that mission. Now, you could certainly argue in your specific department or discipline that, well, if I had $40 million, my program would be the best at whatever. Absolutely. But that money was never earmarked for the academic mission. The administration could have given some of that academic or advisors, or to support startups or initiatives that may have come up from a pro forma perspective and whatnot. But so I just don't want anyone to ever think that money is being pulled from your specific area or at your expense. The academic mission is suffering. Now, all that being said, when you talk about strategic plan, you talk about priorities of the universities, you can on one hand talk about student success and say it's a priority, and then not fund the areas that go towards that mission. So you again have to make those decisions about, is it a priority? And so we've all had strategic plans where you're like, these are our 5 things. And then when you look at the budget, they don't all align with the strategic plan. And so, I don't believe in creating a strategic plan for it just to sit on the bookshelf and meet the check mark for SACS accreditation that, yes, we did a strategic plan. It really should be one. And I know I talked with, your faculty senate president about the next strategic plan, which we're coming up on here in 26 will end. Obviously, it's a great timeline. I just came on board. Our 125th anniversary is 2031. And so, I think everything kind of aligns very nicely that as we begin looking at our next strategic plan, it aligns with kind of the big rocks that I'm thinking about and kind of ties in with that 125th. But I assure you that funding, will be appropriately, resourced to those areas that are important. Does that kind of... Yes, sir.
Brought up this question in a slightly older and period meetings, Sudan, the afternoon, it's actually a follow-up to Jan's question. I don't necessarily want you to give up, the game, but I mean, I've been thinking that this is the right time for you to ask us questions, help you understand the culture of the university and how we function, do well, etc. Because what I'm thinking about is that because of that 26, the end of that strategic plan in 26, there's a room between now, there's time between now and then. We can strategically start thinking about what your priorities are, what your vision is for the university, so understanding that on our part, but at the same time, understand how we can help you and prepare to basically develop that plan, that strategic vision, whatever it is that we lay out for you. Well, fiscally and in terms of other kinds of operations, they should set up priorities. So how do we help? What questions do you have for us?
No, I appreciate that. I think absolutely anything that, for those of you, and I've said this before, but it's always worth repeating, is that I value this forum, right? Shared governance. I think diversity of thought, builds a stronger institution. I think, administration can certainly look at it from one perspective, and that doesn't mean that it's always, completely without, issues and whatnot. There's unintended consequences to every decision. And so I think that, having, a forum such as the Faculty Senate, whether that's a smaller group or subcommittee or whatnot that's put together to answer those questions, is critical to that. And so anything that comes forward as we begin to kind of lay that out, socialize those ideals as we say, okay, this is what we want to do. This is what we're thinking about doing. I think that's certainly, and of course, your Faculty Senate leadership has offered that numerous times, during these conversations about you're here as a resource. And so I can't speak for previous administrations if you felt that you weren't always, brought into the table, or if you were, it was at the last minute. And so you felt as if, your voice, wasn't as strong as it should be. And so I certainly want to, take the time to say that, again, I value that. And if you've talked to my colleagues back at the University of Houston, I think that they'll tell you the same thing, that, I work very well with the Faculty Senate. I think I came from an administration where we saw huge value in that. Despite what Texas is currently doing with the Faculty Senate there, I think even during that conversations with our state legislature, we would tell them that if we didn't have a Faculty Senate, we would still have some form of shadow, governance capacity, because you just need to run ideals past other colleagues to get, their perspective. And in some ways to say, yeah, I did talk to the faculty. And while, not everybody will agree with your decisions, right? At least you did socialize the ideal and you did get feedback and whatnot. I mean, at the end of the day, you may not like the decision, but at least you had an opportunity to put input into it and talk about those unintended consequences. So I'm not prepared to totally talk about, anything today, because again, I just don't want to spoil the surprise. But no, I think again, for me, the big thing is student success. So one of the big things I'm asking the provost to focus on is and student enrollment or enrollment management is, and something I didn't say that in our first meeting is, where are those predictors where we're losing students? What's the retention problem between first and second year, second and third, so on and so forth, right? We have 70% of our students are FTICs, right? The USG system sets the minimum enrollment, admissions criteria for that. It's 2.0, high school. Now our students on average have a much higher GPA than that, right? It's about 3.3, 3.5, I can't remember exactly. But we're clearly dropping students somewhere along that. So are we doing them a disservice by admitting students that are on the lower end of that band? It's possibly, and I'm not saying those are mutually exclusive. I don't believe that, you have to admit high performing students to have high performance on the back end. I think it just takes more time and attention to the other students. But because so many of them are dependent upon financial aid, specifically the Hope Scholarship, if they lose those financial aid benefits, we do know that 40% of the students who drop out, they don't go anywhere. They just stop out. And so would we be better off diverting them to West Georgia Technical? Would we be better off putting them some type of probationary where maybe they're taking a smaller course load? Selfishly, that doesn't impact my graduation rates, but it also helps the student. So I think those are issues that we need to look at. And I think I mentioned this to the faculty, in our last meeting is, I asked the provost, do we have, certain courses that have high dropout, withdrawal, incomplete, failure rates? I realize some of your courses are just hard. I get that, right? That's why I'm not a physicist. Right. But if we have academic advisors, and we all were college students at one point, right? You knew the professors that not to take. Our academic advisors know the professors not to direct students to take. Is there a specific reason? Beyond it's just a hard subject matter. Could that department come together and revamp that curriculum, new textbook, new everything, that might take that, I'm just using a number here, 60% DWIF rate down to 30%? Is that a conversation that's at least worth exploring to say, could we do it, and maybe that's an issue? Are we looking at course scheduling? Does our degree plans require certain requirements for them to graduate, but we're only offering it every 3 years? I don't know all those answers. Those are questions that I'm asking the provost's office. And I'm not saying that you're not doing it correctly, but clearly something's not working, because everybody, says student success is, it's in our strategic plan, but you can go back 15 years and that number hasn't really moved from 43%. Maybe 45 is the highest I think I saw. So clearly it's fairly flat. So I just think those are areas that we can improve upon. So I can't do it by myself. I require, the faculty to be a huge piece of that. And so I'm going to need your help to do that. Enrollment will get us so far. Type of students we admit will get us so far. But, we talked about, if you take one student that's failing in your class, spend a little bit more time and attention. That's 750 students that we can keep. That's 1,500 students a year that we might retain. With the declining enrollment in undergraduate, domestic students, it's getting harder. There's 4,000 colleges and universities out there hustling for the same student bodies that we are. And everyone's like, what's your benefit? What's your, what's your niche? I teach English 101, just like every other university in this country does. So, it has to be something else that makes it special about why they want to come to the University of West Georgia. And there's 1,000 reasons why I think it's important for them to be here. But we have to, student success is a big piece of that. How we sell that to the parents and the other students of why, if you come here, your chances of graduating are much higher. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Just a comment. This is about student preparedness, which factors in their success rates. There was an item on NPR which talked about the nation's scorecard, which said that the students' abilities in reading, mathematics, and the sciences have all dropped over the last 2 decades. And I think COVID only made it worse. This is my 32nd year of teaching at West Georgia, and this is not statistical, but I can feel the difference in the quality of students I had 3 decades ago and what I have now. This is a comment. I don't know what the solution is to help students who are underprepared and struggling succeed.
No, I absolutely agree. I think, I certainly feel like my dad is smarter than me when he came out of high school. No, I think that's absolutely a thing. And of course, the system, put a test optional on the SATs, ACTs. I think this is the last year or next year's the last year on that. So that'll come back into play. And of course that has pros and cons because some students just don't test well. That's another predictor. I don't know if you've all seen it. I can certainly share it. There's the old image where basically it's, the college blaming high school for the poor student, the high school's blaming the parents, for the poor students, the parents are blaming, the next thing, and it's just, this circle where everyone's fingerprinting. At some point, you just have to accept the student as they are, and then we have to just implement the measures, whether that's the writing centers, whether that's whatever, to bring them up to speed. As I said before, we could, and I had this question at another meeting I was at, that we'll just raise the graduation rates. Yeah, that would be certainly one solution to the problem. We could just raise it to, we only take this top 6% of high school students. And we'd be just like UT Austin or Georgia and whatnot, and our students would absolutely have no problem. They're going to be just fine. They'll graduate without any help, right? But we're a regional comprehensive, and so where do our students go if not here? And so, we can't always do that. And again, I don't think those are mutually exclusive. I think it just requires more attention. And so I absolutely hear your concern, and I think that's an area we can address, and that maybe that goes into admitting students provisionally. Maybe there's a University 100 course that teaches them studying, time management skills that would allow them to get up to speed and whatnot. Of course, we're not a community college in the sense that we have a lot of developmental courses that we can send them in pre-algebra or whatnot that helps them with that. And so that's where West Georgia Technical might be a better option from some of the student body. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, questions have been sent to me from constituents, and this really is for both of you. And it's regarding academic freedom. And I know we spoke in executive committee last year, and we touched on it this year. But a lot of faculty are very curious in terms of transparency and oversight of the curriculum. So transparency from the administration and oversight of the curriculum. Many of these questions are really evolving because of the current climate we live in, and Texas A&M is a great example. Other things that are happening. So, are there guiding policies, and if not, are guiding policies being developed that help administrators determine when faculty are asked to modify readings or assignments, other than the course description and the learning outcomes, such as Georgia has the initiative, our syllabi are public facing. So if one parent complains, will that create a cascading event? And if faculty are terminated or pressured into, changing, or if they're reassigned because of the content they've taught, is there going to be a clear policy that covers that, like for recourse for the faculty? Because if we take this moment right now in what we're experiencing, it's very different from what we experienced before, where the academic freedom felt much more protected. We didn't have the fears that if we said a word, we could get terminated, or if we even, put a classic piece of literature into the classroom, that we had no fear that someone would stand up and say, that's obscene. So what's the discussion? What's some guidance? What could both of you say to help us out?
Well, I know that the chancellor and our board are very supportive of academic freedom, and and free speech, right? It's not without certain considerations, right? I mean, there are consequences to any action. I will tell you, for those of you that aren't familiar with one of the cases that happened here at the university, right? And some of these happened at other universities. We had how much of this can I get into detail? As much of it as I want, without, I don't know names, so.
I've got to go remote.
Oh, so we had a limited term faculty member, this is the first day of class, right, who was teaching dual enrollment students. This is an English 1302 course. And the subject matter, when I initially heard it, right, this is before I even got into the office, was that a superintendent or a parent emailed a superintendent or one of our elected officials, however it got up to me, that there was content that was of questionable nature on their syllabus. Now, my immediate thought was to defend the faculty member, was that, well, it's a college level course. It's about critical thinking. And sometimes that's about, addressing material that takes us outside our comfort zone. But I did ask, let me see the whole syllabus. Now, I don't know if any of you have seen the syllabus, right? But it was more than one thing. It was every single item on there was a questionable thing of an LGBT nature. Now, I'm not here to argue, and I'm certainly not a subject matter expert in English to say whether or not Orwell or Faulkner or whatever is the ideal subject matter to get your specific point across for 1302. But I would think that in these topics, right? I'm not saying that you couldn't make the argument they were, but given that you had minors taking the class, given the environment, I would think that that particular subject matter to me came across more as an agenda, and it came across as certainly appropriate for an upper level course to discuss the value of how English can sway public opinion or social norms, by using these examples from Brokeback Mountain to there were various poems and other literature. So it became harder to defend in that particular case, and certainly given the audience included, dual enrollment students. And so I think it's not about limiting your freedom, but it's also being cognizant of the audience that's in there, because those are both worlds that I have to operate in. I value academic freedom. I value your decision, but I think even the AAUP, says that it's not without limitations. And so, I think that's the same thing. I know the chancellor will say with regards to the posting of syllabi is that his concern is, and that, which is what I initially thought when I heard it, was that one syllabi was posted and what was actually given to the students in class was completely different. That was not the case in this particular example. In fact, by all accounts, they submitted it. I think there was some management or lack of supervision oversight that may have contributed to not catching it sooner. I think it does bring the questions when you have limited term faculty. I'm not talking about restricting their abilities, but maybe we should just, and I'm going to allow the provost to get into that. Maybe there should be, less of you just operating outside the left and right lateral limits on that, and just the department as a whole saying this is what we agree as 1302. It's much easier to defend if the entire department comes together and says, this is what we think that a student needs to know. And there can be some gray areas on writing assignments or whatnot. I don't want to so script it that you don't have the ability to teach what you want to teach. But at the same time, I think in that particular case, we allowed a limited term faculty member to come in who's not part of the faculty here to just write their own syllabus for that, make that their own determination. And whether or not you agree or not, I can't say to that. But does that somewhat answer your question?
Yeah, somewhat. And then, considering the dual enrollment, do we have any safeguards or stops in place that let parents know you're coming into a college class? Because, that is that case, but then, we potentially, I'm just imagining, from my past experience being chair of the department, that, if someone objects even to something that's not objectionable, what are our processes and procedures?
Well, I'll tell you that I had a conversation with the board, actually, when I was interviewing. And one of the questions, because of course, some of the new guidelines, right, on, which has always been, right, I mean, your ability to teach has to be relevant to the subject matter that you're teaching and has to give the perspectives, you know, and whatever. And so I think the board is fine with that. Now, as I told them in my example, is that at Houston, we had a faculty member that was teaching religious studies on Hinduism. And the faculty member was talking about extremists and was saying that the current administration in India, Prime Minister Modi was, extremist and whatever. Now, he was using the term extremist, or using the definition that extreme is just a more interpreted, direct reading of, their religious text, just like Christianity or any other thing. This individual took it a different thing, was complaining. And those examples, just because it makes you uncomfortable, doesn't mean that it's not relevant to the course. Relevant to the course is that if you're teaching all conservative, but not giving the other perspective in the course, is what I think the board, at least my understanding of the board, was that they want uniformity in the instruction, that you're not just going off and teaching subject matter that's either irrelevant to the course or bringing content into the course that's not relevant. That's a fine line of what's relevant. I understand that, right? And so that's an area that continues to be pushed, and we'll have to explore that. The issue that happened in Texas, just to put that into context, you have to, and having come from Texas, you have to take that into a larger picture of Texas A&M. They had an issue last year where there was some stuff going on. The governor basically was saying, "I'll fire the president," and whatnot. And so there was an immense amount of pressure on the administration to conform. UT faculty were probably a huge piece of a lot of the legislation, because they basically told the lieutenant governor that, well, I have tenure, and so there's nothing you can do. And he took that as a personal affront to his ability, to control, in effect, what are state employees. And so, that created a larger issue there. The disbandment of the Faculty Senate was really a push at somewhat in curriculum development of the undergraduate committee and what they believed was coming through in the agenda. But I think most of the administrators there would say, tried to work with the legislators that we still needed the Faculty Senate, but that outcome was going to happen, no matter what. So that was trying to find a solution that would allow, the legislators to feel that they were achieving their objectives or their constituent objectives, and the universities to say that we still needed some form of shared governance in that process.
From the experience you had with this English 1102 course, I just heard about, is there a policy about giving the faculty member voice? Is there a policy in how that's handled now that you've had this?
Yeah, y'all are taking the words out of my mouth here. I was looking forward to getting into this because I've had a lot of conversations in the last month about this. So specifically to the question, what is the policy in an ideal world? Faculty, and I firmly believe in faculty governance curricula. Had a great conversation about that with marketing faculty earlier today. Faculty are coming together and saying, here is what we believe as experts in the discipline should be in these courses. And they're reviewed on a regular basis. So if there's an individual section of those courses, it's based on what the faculty in those areas have defined. And they're reviewed regularly. Currency, relevance, et cetera. Specifically to, if there's a third party that's asking, or a student is saying, well, this should or shouldn't be in there, then you go back to that review process and you say, this is what the faculty in English or theater or marketing or computer science, whatever it is, have defined as what should be in that. And that's the process of creating and responding to that. It also reduces individuals' exposure for, well, I don't believe that John Preston should be teaching this. Well, I, as part of the CS faculty, I'm implementing what the CS faculty have said is appropriate in these courses. And then how does that compare to peer and comps? What are others doing? And accreditation fits into that as well. So I think embedded in the earlier question was also what is due process? And I raised this in Provost Council earlier this week. The USG policy on due process, grievance, that's well established. So I can't speak about Texas or other institutions, but within the university system of Georgia, and the chancellor affirmed this earlier in the Board of Regents meeting, free exchange of ideas and that ability for people, going back last year at a Board of Regents meeting, they specifically said you should be able to have minority and majority opinion within classes. And this came from the chancellor, who stated it's more often not the faculty who are tamping down a minority opinion, it's peer students. So I think there's a recognition in the system office that, there's not this gotcha mentality. So I'm taking over the platform.
No, please.
But,
This could be.
Influence the discussion on that.
Yeah, and I think that gets back into the earlier, I love that this came up in Provost Council. I think we're a victim of our own success. If it was a class of room of 30 with 2 dual enrollment students, that's a different environment than what we've tried to do in expanding access for dual enrollment. We've now got sections that are all dual enrollment, right, through Go West Early. I love that, that's brilliant, and it's certainly meeting a need. But it's created a scenario that doesn't exist, and we talked with the system office on this. We're at the vanguard of that, and so now you've got a class of 24, 30 students. And I think, and I was talking with Cassidy and Monica earlier today about what is the frequently asked questions? What is that MOU that I think UWG historically even had parents and guardians and students sign? I'm going back, to my own kids that did that. I think that's a valid approach. I think that's an appropriate approach so that people understand the rules of engagement and how are we working in this class. With the sensitivity, to the president's point, that when you are teaching a dual enrollment class, when you do have minors, then you need to be mindful of that. And
Minors taking a college class.
correct,
So we don't want to change them then because they're minors.
I agree, but there's already precedent for that in the USG. Go back 8 years and under campus carry, there's a provision that states if you have a minor, if you have a high school student in your course, then weapons are not allowed to be brought into that classroom. So I point to that as an example where the state has already established that there's a different situation when there are high school students in. Now let's have that discussion about content, and I don't, to be clear, I'm not curtailing, but there is a mindfulness that needs to play. And we've had dialogue externally. These inquiries come up every single year. And you've heard me state before, right? It's when the faculty are establishing that content rather than the individual person who nobody else has reviewed. The president's question that support and that infrastructure of the chair and the program coordinator and the dean. That's the best place to be.
I have some follow-up questions from the faculty. Is it legal for students to bill our classes? Do we have the right to ask disruptive students to leave our classes?
I can't speak to the filming. Disruption, again, I think in some of our previous conversations, I have talked about, as a faculty member, that's your classroom. And so anything that interferes with the safety and security of the university, of course, faculty, staff, and students. And then on the other guardrail of that is anything that interferes with the operation and mission of the university. And so if a student is being disruption or if they're protesting or whatever, then you as a faculty member, can ask them to leave. What I would prefer is to de-escalate the situation so that they're asked to leave. But if it comes to a point where they're chaining themselves to your desk, then if we have to call the police department to come rectify that, then that's what we'll have to do. And again, so that universities mission is not disrupted as a result of that. I can't speak to the filming. I don't know what the laws here in Georgia are with regards to the filming, but I'd have to talk to general counsel to understand.
Taking note on that. I'll get back with you.
Yes, sir.
Perhaps a comment, I'm not sure if it's a question, but I think what we're talking about, two separate things. One is what due process we practically have, what due process we have currently established, or should we establish when this incident is happening, because they will have to. Versus what content should faculty, as a group of experts in their own fields, begin to have conversations about establishing so that we can be able to defend, our practices to critical public.
Right.
And especially so that we can use it as part of that due process that I believe, must afford faculty who are in the front lines, teaching subjects that will definitely raise a lot of questions, especially for people outside of this setting. When I teach politics, trust me, I know exactly what I'm talking about. And you've heard me in any setting, you better believe that I'm pushing for power. So that's what people I think are asking. What is the current process that exists? And if it doesn't exist, can we begin to have a conversation about developing so that faculty, so that if a mob comes and says, you or somebody demands that you fire a faculty member, you can say, well, we have a process and we're gonna follow it. And this is a process and we're gonna follow it. Because lately, what's been happening outside of this, personally, in many other places, is that holding people, outside, just simply start demanding the faculty get fired, and then suddenly people are getting fired. And, I'm not gonna say that was the right thing, the wrong thing to do, but to me, always I go back, what was the policy procedure that was used to ensure that that faculty was supported due process before whatever action was taken.
Right.
If there was a process, I think it's, I may disagree with the end result, but if there is a process, I would feel a lot more confident. Because I would feel that there is some, it seems to me that right now, we don't seem to be happening. Which is different from the conversation about what is relevant content within our disciplines to discuss. Two separate things.
I hear what you're saying. I'm not familiar with your faculty handbook, but those policies and grievance should be outlined in there all the way up to the system level to continue to appeal it ultimately to that if those decisions were made.
That speaks to the content of.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't necessarily be about that. It would be about if you're talking about getting terminated versus changing your thing.
Yeah, the process for dismissal, 831, I don't know the number, whatever it is elaborate. And it is not,
For tenured faculty, but we have a lot of non-tenured people, and I think a lot of, and I'm a tenured faculty, so I'm not necessarily speaking about me. But there are a lot of non-tenured faculty who really feel that more strongly than tenured faculty. Because that process doesn't really apply to them as it applies to faculty, tenured faculty.
I'm happy to have that debate. I would interpret that, and as I've had conversations with the system office, there's not a distinction. You have notice that must be granted for, final year, for non-tenure lecturers, senior lecturers, instructors. But then back to the content, you're absolutely right. Within the faculty handbook, the only guidance there is you can't pick a book for your course that you wrote without other people looking, right? That's kind of a common sense. So we can revisit that as well throughout this year. And give examples. I kind of talk about that 3-year review and accreditation coming from an ABET accredited program. That's very well established, and I would encourage, that we may capture the essence of that. I know ACSB and other accreditation bodies have similar processes for regular curricular review. We might adopt that as part of policy.
So if I could just briefly, if we have any questions that are really in the wheelhouse of the president, we can prioritize those, so to respect his time, and then we can shift to more of a conversation with staff. But anything really specifically for the president, otherwise we can make sure you can do this.
I don't, yeah, okay, this is not controversial, so this is sort of like, I know the state has a list for buildings that should be demolished.
Yes.
And I know it costs money to demolish buildings. Do you have an update? Is there any update on like the old anthropology building or any of the buildings on campus that are slated to be demolished?
The last briefing I was given on that, and I had asked our government relations team to reach out, is that once it's approved, it goes to the governor's office for signature because it's a government building, and that it was sitting on his desk for signature. And so that's the last update I got on it. So once we get that, I don't know how many buildings. I thought there was like 2 buildings that I was aware of. You know, then money will be allocated to tear those down.
Just FYI, someone who works in a building next door to the anthropology building. The lights are still on, and there's this raggedy old chair sitting outside of it that's been there for as long as building's been abandoned. We have students, we have prospective students coming all the time, just doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, a specific request for you. I know you've got a super busy schedule and you may be planning to do this, but we look forward to you visiting at least our colleges to talk with us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If I can get more of this. Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to work with the provost. I've certainly asked my team to set up time to get to the colleges and down to the department chair meetings or whenever I'm invited. I don't want to intrude, just like, again, your classroom. For those that allowed me to come visit the freshmen, the first and foremost, what I said is somewhat to our earlier conversation, is your classroom. I ask permission to come. I don't just assume that I can walk into your classroom. You have course material that you're teaching.
I'm coming to my classroom.
Well, I appreciate the open invitation.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
Very much. Turn it over to Provost Preston.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think we've already kind of jumped in.
Yeah.
I love the lively debate, and I think that Dylan indicated, passed on some comments of, things that you all wanted to talk about. So I'm going to hit those real briefly, and then we can dive in. But before I get into those, I want to talk about 2 examples of students in the last few months that I didn't really capture. I mean, we now launched the fall semester. I'm not going to talk about burgers and fries today. That was the general faculty meeting. But I do want to kind of carry on that idea of going the extra mile for students. And 2 examples really kind of lead into that. One is a student who was admitted both at West Georgia and another USG institution who couldn't get into the classes that they needed during orientation. Because of that, that was going to delay their ability to be successful in nursing and move on and progress. I mean, they're looking years down, and they knew if they couldn't get into the bio class in their first term, they were going to be inhibited downstream. And so I said, well, look, we'd love to have you at West Georgia. And I did a quick search and said, we've got 17 seats open that you can get into. And because of that, the student came and toured, loved it, fell in love with West Georgia again, and then they're currently enrolled. And they're in those classes that they need. And I point that example out because in the last 2 months in particular, leading up to the beginning of the semester, we had a tremendous amount of work of new sections and hiring LTIs and part-time. And I'm not going to ask to rate, a show of hands, but I know many of you in here are teaching an overloaded course because of that growth. And I love that, but I don't love the fact that you're being, stretched. And I'm mindful that annual review and promotion and tenure and all of these great things, just being alive and being healthy. I love that people have stepped up, but that's not sustainable long-term. So the president's comments about growth and sustainability, advocating for additional resources into academic affairs to make sure that we can continue to be great as well as to be large or larger and accommodate those students where others might not. The other example is a student who reached out. She had been here 5 years ago and life happened. I think 11 credits away from graduation, right? That's crazy, right? I mean, that's so close. And yet wasn't able to get across that stage. And so connected a student in perspective, interdisciplinary studies, psychology, sociology, just various places that they might be able to finish and help achieve the goal. And I love that those program coordinators and department chairs and school directors just leaned all in. And I got a response back from that student yesterday saying they got their official welcome. They still have their same 917 that they had memorized from all those years ago. And they're going to be able to graduate, hopefully in the next calendar year, and achieve that goal. So I talk about how we're meeting those needs of really two different ends of that spectrum, either first time coming in out of high school, and then also someone who was here and departed and is coming back, because I think that captures a lot of the great work that you and others across UWG have done coming up into this semester. And then we're already planning for that spring 26. Those are going to go live very, very soon. So I recognize the heavy lift and the challenge there, those growing pains. You heard the president mention just over 16,000. Breaking that down, we've got over 2,000 dual enrollment students. I'm rounding here, but about 2,000, which now we've got some acute things that have popped up because of that. And we're taking those head on, but I still lean into that DE space because that's a great entree in recruiting first-time, full-time students coming here. We're talking about that demographic cliff in 2027. And I remember the first time I heard that years ago, and it was like, wow, that's forever. Am I even gonna be alive then? Yeah. It is upon us. But we're not waiting for that to occur. We're finding creative ways of making sure that our enrollment in this institution are sustained and sustained well. In talking with the chancellor in February at our budget meeting, he recognized that dual enrollment and that growth. And before he even asked, we said that's a major initiative for us in our undergraduate. Undergraduate as a whole is about 8,000 students in addition to those DE, and then graduate is 6K, give or take. Very different markets, very different students, and addressing those uniquely. And I appreciate everything that we're doing. SEM, right? That you saw that Monica and I are kind of tag teaming on strategic enrollment management, and we're having some great conversations. The president's point around what are some key pebbles in our shoe that we can just get out and do better, streamlining. One example of that, and kudos to the advising team and also to UC in particular, we've got 909 students that are living on campus, first time, full time, and prior to them going to orientation in summer, we pre-registered them into courses so that they weren't coming into orientation and trying to figure out what the heck is a CRM, right? I mean, should anybody even have to know what a CRM? That's like a database nerd term, right? That should be under the, behind the curtains, and they should just say, I want to get into English 1101. So now we've got this 909 students on campus, first time, full time. We need to register them for classes before spring registration opens. And I get that we've got, we don't want to preempt our graduating seniors, and there are other populations that definitely need to be first in line. But these are the students that are on campus. The livelihood, the liveliness, the energy that we're feeling more and more on campus is because of leaning into that. And so we're going to be maybe shifting some classes, adding some classes, making sure that we're meeting. Anything else on that, Monica, that I'm forgetting?
No, adding the classes, adding more of the Monday, Wednesday,
Yep.
Friday, hopefully you feel some differences on Friday than what it used to look like. The advisors, kudos to them, they're getting ready to take the charge and enroll them in 3 classes for the spring, so that they still have an option for those other 2.
Yeah. And we're going to assume that they're going to come back. We actually lose about 30% of our students who live on campus from fall to spring. That's tremendous, right? So let's call that 300 students that are going to just evaporate. I don't know about y'all, but every month T-Mobile just takes my money. I don't have to give it to them, right? They give me like $3 discount for auto bill pay, whatever it is. We need to assume that our students are just going to come back. And I think that's going to make a big difference. So more to come on that, but some small things that are going to make a big difference. In the last week, or this week and in next week, we had ABET accreditation visit. Kudos for computing and CS and everybody involved in that. Great visit. Next week, again, talking about distinctiveness and what we do really well. The Prison Ed program has an on-site SAC-COC visit. A lot of work has gone into that. Not only to build that at Second Chance Pell, we are on the vanguard of that. There's not many places around the nation that are doing that work. And we are now at a point where we are leading and we are mentoring other USG and other institutions with that. And as soon as we come through that SAC COC on site next week, which I know is going to go great, we now have the ability to fully deliver the entire program at those sites. Don't know if it's made it down to you, but for visibility, which I know, communication and making sure there's awareness was another item that Dylan passed on to me. Shared this, I know you can't read it, right? But this is a restructuring of RACs. How many of y'all are in Regents Advisory Councils for your disciplines? And you know what a RAC is, right? So yeah, this is a statewide gathering by discipline. It's also all the provosts, all the enrollment management, student affairs, etc. They're changing that structure because it was onerous for people to travel. And with the limited professional development dollars that we have, going to a state meeting wasn't necessarily the best use of that. So we now have CAGs, sorry, help me out here. Chief Academic Officer Advisory Groups. This is the disciplinary areas that will be meeting virtually. You've got advisory teams, which is once a year in person and then online as needed. And then you've got advisory leaders groups. That would be your academic affairs, enrollment management, student affairs. I shared this with deans earlier this week. So hopefully they're passing that down to you and making sure that all the program coordinators are aware of that. I think I sent it to Provost Council as well. So Dylan, you've got a copy of that. If you'll add that into the minutes, then everybody here will have that. Thank you, Laura. Saw the nod. You're already on it. Couple of other updates structurally. We have a vacant position in the office of the provost when Jill Drake, who's phenomenal, continues to be phenomenal, departed. We did not backfill that position. So I'm happy to say that David Newton is stepping into the interim assistant vice president for academic affairs. Currently the senior fellow for student success and moving into that interim position. We'll be doing an internal search in the spring. So if you have interest in that and you want to throw your hat into that, I welcome you to apply. Please reach out to me and then you'll see that call for interest coming up in a bit. Additionally, Lindsay Buffington is transitioning from the Director of Institutional Projects and Strategic Initiatives to Executive Director, coordinating large-scale high-impact programs, including Townsend, Continuing Ed, Noonan, Douglasville. Yes, I said Douglasville. We can have a site there and serve those students as well as UWG Online. But back to David for a moment, done a phenomenal work in coordinating with the system office, in curriculog and momentum year, all kinds of elements there. And so stepping in, helping out not only with that, but also with our SAC COC work and a lot of the details that David, you can share. But appreciate your expertise in the work heretofore and look forward to working with you in that role. Thank you very much. I know we've got Kirk and Justin here. They're going to go into some ITS, but I want to start by saying we're kind of shifting phones. Right now, we've got a huge cost escalator in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that are going to deplete very needed dollars that the institution needs elsewhere. So I'm glad that ITS, you'll have been looking at this actually for multiple years, but pretty acutely in the last year. We've got a tech solution, and you might have heard that this is coming. 2 points I'd like to make. Number one, if you want a handset to pick up on your device, on your desk, you can still have that. And number two, if you don't, then you can just have soft phones and it'll ring on your UWG device. Or if you want to load it on your personal device, then Teams can ring you wherever you are. It's flexibility and it's up to you, but it is not requiring you to use your personal device. And it is not requiring you to get rid of that desktop device, although I think that there's some goals there because it does cost us some maintenance in that. The other side is you will still be able to receive and initiate external calls. So there's some confusion about that. And if it's just Teams, can I only ring people inside of UWG? That's not the case. You can still get calls and you can still make calls that go outside. They'll get into more of the specifics of that, but I want to start with those two things because I know that that's been questions, those have been questions that I've received. And now let's take on the easy stuff, right? institutional support for faculty and academic freedom. I know we've already gotten into that a little bit, but I do want to affirm Chancellor's comments earlier this week. I've said it before, AAUP guidance on this is very clear. And we can certainly improve our wording if you want to take that up as a faculty to say, what are those guidelines beyond you just can't pick your own book for your class without some external review. But what are those structures in place? I'm confident that there's due process and there's a lot of steps before someone is dismissed. But if there's anxiety around that, we can revisit that, we can look at that. It's very essential that we have that, even for non-tenured faculty. That's important. People need to have the confidence that they can teach and do excellent work, that's the starting place. You all are phenomenal, and you all are disciplinary experts in your respective areas, and that's the starting place. So then it comes down to the devil's in the details, right? So if I'm going to speak about political science and I'm going to talk about this topic, what is my vulnerability and what kind of external pressures might come to me in English and the textbook selection and so forth. I've had conversations with Tim and Karen and others around the English faculty, those first-year English faculty, as an example, coming together and saying, here are certainly the course outcomes and the syllabus, and we're kind of defining those core elements. But then what are the readings that we as a faculty believe are the most relevant and able to support student learning outcomes in these classes? That doesn't prevent you from adding to with conversation. But I think there's some intelligence in us discussing how content is selected among the faculty. I'm not in the room, the president's not in the room, the dean's not in the room, right? That is a faculty decision based on the expertise that you have. And then pointing out to other examples. I could teach an operating systems class, but the text that I used to teach decades ago is probably not relevant, right? They're still talking about Linux 1.0, not the modern stuff. So that's going to look different. There was a section that talked about hard drive lookups and algorithms. That's solid state, right? Nobody uses physical disk anymore. Although, don't correct me, I'm getting into IT space now, right? Different content, making that relevant based on the discipline. And that's where it should reside. So let's start there. The other example is this idea, or this other question that came up, was standardization. I am not calling for standardization of classes. I think Karen Owen used a better word, it's coherence. And it's not just wordplay. But what that means is if we've got 40 sections of a course, there should be some coherence about the faculty have decided that this is what is in that class. Now, individual faculty should absolutely have the right to customize and put their own flavor on those classes. But it's probably not the case that you could demonstrate equivalence in learning and delivery of a course if they're all different from each other 100%. We can debate that, happy to discuss, but coming together as a faculty and saying, here are what we believe are in these classes is the goal there. There's some really secondary and tertiary benefits of this. If we've selected common textbooks across all sections, or at least maybe 2 or 3 textbooks across many sections, then outfitters can stop those and buy them back. If we have no idea what would be offered in future semesters, then outfitters isn't going to do used book sales or buyback. So students lose that ability. You can say that may or may not matter. And again, you all are guiding that content, but there is no administrative or institutional goal of homogenizing and making every section the same. I think that would gut the spirit and what each of you as experts bring. The other question that we already kind of got into was the dual enrollment. And I think we're going back with Cassidy in SEM, looking at that rules of engagement and letting people know this is a college course. And one of the benefits of us publishing the syllabus is if you're uncomfortable with this content, or your guardian or your parent are uncomfortable with this content, pick a different section. And yet, there are examples where there is some content that in the case of one section, different discussion, it was TVMA, and that's for non-minors. In defense of the faculty that picked that, they were selecting particular episodes that were not kind of thrown into the higher elevated violence, sexuality language. It was contextualized. So in respect to the faculty that were picking that content, there was what was perceived is different than what was being implemented. And working with people when they have external inquiries to explain that. So again, like the president, your class, you're driving that. I think we have a solid answer for faculty picking these things. Yep.
So like, I know you can't give us personal specifics, but there's lots of 1102 sections. Right? So could those students not have chosen a different section that did include LGBTQ materials?
Absolutely.
And then were those faculty members, those LTIs, given the option, like, there's rumors going around, right, they resigned. Can you give us more clarity on like the process of how that happens?
Yeah, as an HR matter, I really can't get into the specifics of that, but for my part, I feel very confident that we were respectful of due process and also of faculty governance of content. The chair, program coordinator, dean were involved in that. This was not me or the president coming in and saying, you can't do this. There were a number of conversations that were had. And because it's an HR matter, I can't go into more specifics. Ideally, we have that sooner than later. To the president's point, I think, on the institution, there was a lack of support for people who had just arrived. And we're working to fix that as well. So it was really a perfect storm. Unfortunately, I hope that it's rare. And, when we bring someone in, we bring them in because they're great and we want them to be here.
My other follow-up to that, and I appreciate your candor, is how do we acknowledge like specific expertise to specific expertise over ideology when we have external concerns brought to us?
So the starting place, and I'll echo the president's recent comment here, the starting place is we trust the faculty and the disciplines that they're in. And I think you're asking a question that if we could solve that, we'd have world peace, right? I wish. I have fielded in the last 5 years, and I'm sure we will continue to field inquiry. There has never been a case where an external person says, you cannot do this for X, right? So we have a ready answer. And the example I talked about before, this is a number of years ago, was the concept of privilege. We had an inquiry that said, show me all cases where the concept of privilege is discussed. We pulled from curriculum, we objectively responded to that, and then we moved on. The faculty in various courses in various colleges and schools were talking about that concept. And we answered the inquiry. And if there was a follow-up or if there was a board action or something, then we would have responded to. I think the best place we can be is to hire educated, excellent faculty that know their disciplines. They collectively define the corpus of their areas. So again, this is sociology, this is English, this is theater, this is CS, whatever it is. Then individual courses are implemented and reviewed on a regular basis. If we're doing that tied to accreditation and here in comp, not that everyone has to be doing the same thing at Southern Kennesaw us, but let's look at what others are doing. Then that is the best response. We're not alone on an island doing something that's rogue, although if we are, sometimes that's cool. Be the vanguard. Great. And I have to talk in kind of those broad structures because individual situations will come up. If we have followed that process, that's the best place that we can be in. That doesn't change that people are going to have disagreements or have questions. We'll just respond to them. Yes.
Another question about the circumstance where you have no enrollment students in your class, but your class isn't for different enrollment solely. Am I correct that we don't know if we have enrollment students in our class?
We need to improve this process. In particular, at the very least, it's an 8-year-old law that campus carry applies, right? And this was a big deal and debated heavily back in the day. I need to look into, are we notifying faculty that they have minors in their classes, not only for potential content and, I mean, alternate assignments, right? Let's have a conversation. You know, if this is uncomfortable, maybe it's okay for it to be uncomfortable. We're trying to expand people. Maybe there needs to be an accommodation made. But at the very least, we need to be notifying faculty if there are minors in their class so that they can comply with and notify students for campus carry ball.
Campus carry and also evidently content now too, right? There seems to be some concern about, for me, I have a concern because I teach an introductory course that covers aspects of human evolution and sex and gender, in addition to all kinds of other subject materials that various non-adults might not, their families might not be in alignment with those concepts and ideologically. For my discipline, I literally can't start them out in my discipline without covering the basics of these ideas. And if I don't know they're in the room, I don't know my responsibilities to them. And so I don't really know the expectations.
So let me start from a content, I'm not aware, I mean, in a particular case that we've recently dealt with, it was very clearly TDMA. So that was the basis of that conversation, because the ESRB and whatever the TDMA, that was mature audiences, right? That's a more clear cut than I want to talk about this concept. And I think there's a stronger argument of if this is a rated R film or an NC-17 or a TDMA that has been deemed inappropriate by an external third body, then let's you and I have a conversation about evolution, sexuality, whatever the topic might be that might be perceived as inappropriate. I think we run into dangerous ground when we say these topics are off limits if you're a minor. And the notification to parents, guardians, and students prior to entering a class is the appropriate approach. This is a college course. Slightly different APIB, I mean, that's a college course that's delivered, or it's college content delivered in a high school. And we are in a very interesting new space when we're delivering dual enrollment to all high school students on our campus. I think there's a stronger argument that the collegiate content is appropriate with awareness being made in front end. Yes.
Are you, including the high school counselors, advisors, so that they can kind of get used to telling their students about this stuff too, not just the parents?
Yes, we are. And this is something we need to say 10 times over, right? You know, anything like that is important, and the counselors need to know, and we need to reinforce this message again and again and again, that this is a college course. And to be clear, we've heard that in the last year and a half as we expanded this, that faculty who are teaching these DE classes have increasingly said, this isn't a high school course. I didn't come to West Georgia to teach high school. I came to teach college, and I respect that. So we need to do a better job of making sure that people understand what they are getting into. And I'm confident that they're great and the content is phenomenal. People need to know.
So what happens if a parent and the dual enrollment student are looking at syllabi and they pick the safe one, but they complain about the one that's more adult?
I'll take that inquiry, right? I don't know, like, what, if they're in a different class and they're gonna complain about something else,
Well,
like,
but I mean, the syllabus is there for them to see.
sure.
So that, well, you're not going in that, but I'm gonna call about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to be a CS major. I took those courses. I don't think it's, you know, why would I call and say, well,
Well, if you're taking English 1101 or 1102,
Yeah.
theater appreciation.
all I can say is I'll field those inquiries. And again, back to the faculty have decided this is the content. They're not in it. I think what we're getting into is a broader cultural conversation of acrimony and people, you know, behind keyboards, and I can't solve that. All we can do is be the greatest place we can be. And when someone wants to have an opinion, I'll hear that opinion. That doesn't change the expertise of our content.
I'm asking you about advocacy, right? And if that class that's more adult gets complained about, even though this dual enrollment student's taking another class, what happens? Is that complaint get taken to the faculty member? Does it? what's the due process in that?
I mean, in your hypothetical, someone's not in the class,
They're shopping for classes.
okay,
That's what we've been told that this syllabus thing is about, right? And so if they're shopping for classes, they're looking for syllabi, they say, the parent says, we want you to take this course, but we're really concerned about this section. And we're gonna complain. I mean, I just don't know what that, where does that go then?
assuming it goes to the office of the president, or the provost, or the dean, or whoever, we'll respond and we'll. In the case of these inquiries, I'm gonna respond and say, here we have a wealth of choices, I believe in the marketplace of ideas. People wanna go in different areas, that's their choice. There are probably some students that are interested in that, and they're gonna sign up for that. Yes.
I have a suggestion both for the faculty and also for you when you communicate with high school, advisors. Not, this has served us really well in the local side, but the answer is shortage of conflict in our classes. We know what's going on. Oftentimes what happens with students when they hear something, they're exposed to somebody in the classroom, that they immediately either post it online or they go to the president. The president is going to solve my problem. But what we have been trying to help students understand is that there's a chain within the university system, right? And it begins with me, the fact if you have a complaint, talk to me. If you don't feel comfortable, talk to me. Got my good friend right here, the chair of the department, talk to him. He'll come and say it's great. And if he cannot answer your question, then there's my friend over there. She's the dean of the college or the university. And at that point, then it just keeps bouncing up. But if we make that a uniform message to students and to parents, because parents do the same thing.
Sure.
I think they will begin to understand, because it's a lot easier to talk to parents.
Problems are solved best locally, absolutely. And back to the earlier questions of due process, let's have an opportunity for the faculty to work with the students and resolve, perhaps make an accommodation if that's your call. Alternate assignment, alternate reading, or no, this is what this class is about. This is fundamentally the experience. Yes.
Considering we're the microcosm of all the faculty on campus, we represent faculty stuff. If we take this as a snapshot of concerns, those concerns are rippling or bigger across campus from pre-tenured, tenure, limited term, lecturers, adjuncts across the board. In terms of academic affairs, what could be the message, memo, whatever it might be, that you could share or your office could share with the faculty as a whole to help alleviate or to reassure us and start to tamp down the fears that are really developing? And and I can share a lot of anecdotal. I get confronted by people in the community in Carrollton that say I'm indoctrinating kids. We experience stuff like this pretty regularly. We have the media that, if we read the news, it's very hard not to read the news. But if we think of our community, our colleagues, you're our colleague, we're your colleagues, what can be done to just help us feel better?
Yeah, that's, thank you for the question. I think the first thing is, as you identified, you are representative. So please go back and echo my comments. We've got maybe some people watching online as well. I hope that you're getting a sense that the president and the provost support you. And the default is we've got fantastic faculty who are experts in their domain. Now, if someone wants to challenge that, we'll have that debate, right? Speaking personally, son was starting at a different USG institution. The VP of Student Affairs came in and said, before you come to us and say, we corrupted your child, right? Maybe this was who they were, right? And they're gaining their waves. And I took that to heart. I thought that was a brilliant statement at another institution, right? So there's lots of different interpretations of that statement, but we all grow and we change every year. So I'm happy, and I pass this on to the deans. earlier this week or late last week, that ask of faculty governance of the curricula and the content and a periodic review. I could spread that more broadly. I'm happy to share a letter to, if you want to put this out on behalf of the, to the faculty senate, and you all can share this. A blast to all faculty or in the newsletter. I don't want to create an event, right? I don't want people, it could also add to anxiety if the provost comes out and says, hey, don't worry, you're not gonna be fired. That's, I don't know about you, I would interpret that like, yeah, right?
Yeah.
But your point is well made, and I hope that you hear in our comments, you all do great work. I think that's the default. And if people want to say, you're corrupting my, the students, let's have that debate, let's have that conversation. Again, I keep quoting the chancellor. If it was recorded and it's available, I encourage you to listen to his comments from the board meeting earlier this week. He talks about the free exchange of ideas as the core of the academy. And let's have civil discussion, let's have civil debate. Respectful debate. Thank you. And I think that's what we do as educators. We expose people to ideas, right, that we have and that we've developed, and we're putting them out there for others to absorb or critique and debate. We do that when we publish our scholarship. We do that in the classroom. Thank you. So let me give a short version of that. I'm giving myself some homework here, and then if you want something in writing, I can give it to you, but I don't want to go through all the hypotheticals and the possibilities. I think that might just add fuel to the fire.
I think, just that short thing could be pretty helpful. I know I led the folks I've worked with, I reassure them, even from our conversation in executive committee last year, I let them know what you said or to reassure them, but sometimes just that tiny little thing in writing will speak a lot for them.
And I respect, people's anxiety or their feelings in the positions that they're in. But I also want to help contextualize this, that I don't think we're as vulnerable and the higher ed is as chaotic as clickbait articles and others might want us to believe.
I think it's different on the ground though.
Again, I respect that.
It feels a lot different.
I respect
It feels pretty chaotic. And it's the structure of things as well, right? I mean, faculty are doing more administrative things than they ever have.
Well, yes.
Comment following that, like, I know we can't control public opinion, but as someone who also lives in Carrollton, I've heard that parents feel emboldened by the recent social media success to pressure the university, that other school administrators don't want to send their students here for field trips because they don't want to deal with the West Georgia problem. And so a statement of support for the faculty, yes, that's great. Does that translate into the community knowing that we're going to teach critical thinking, that we're going to have debates? We're also swimming in this community, these comments, and so maybe we could address both.
And anytime, going to a function tonight, anyone brings these things up, I'm always promoting UWG, right? The two students I talked about earlier, we're pulling people here because it's a great place. So anytime I've got an opportunity in the community, happy to do that. We'll absolutely do that. When people talk about the value of higher education, I'll take that on as well and advocate. It's absolutely there. The best thing we can do is continue to be fantastic and just let the chips fall. Was there a question? I appreciate the questions. I appreciate this conversation. I hope that this gives you a sense that we are doing great work. And yeah, there's some minor hiccups along the way, but we'll get through those. Speaking of hiccups, right? I'm going to take on merit, which I think is another conversation that's been had across the last week or so. So just to give you context for this, the University System of Georgia back in April allocated funds for merit, which is fantastic. For anybody who's been in the USG for a while, that doesn't come around all the time, right? I wish it did, and I hope that it increases. I appreciate the governor and the chancellor and the support that we've had in COLA and other increases in recent years. But in this particular case, this merit amount was allocated to different institutions. The president's office at the time, working with OHR, directed that process. And it included receiving the annual reviews for faculty and staff, and the staff were ongoing. The faculty had concluded in our normal annual evaluation process. And then those were used as the basis for those merit allocations. If you look at the USG policy on this, for the guidelines that were given, it was 2% up to 4%, but an average of 2% across the top 15% based on annual evaluations. Based on those constraints, there's not a lot of leeway to modify. And so OHR, working with the Office of the President, and I was in these discussions, take the annual evaluations, sort them, top 15%, and allocate from an equity perspective. I'm aware, and we talked about this in Provost Council, I respect the faculty handbook in section 104.0102, I think it is, that talks about merit. That's typical of if an institution were being allocated, or if we had dollars that we were using as part of our normal budget to go through a more public discussion where it's kind of, here's the amount, you decide. That was not the process that was not the scenario that we were in. So in normal circumstances, again, I'm very sensitive to handbook and policy and absolutely believe in and advocate for that. In this case, we were not within that space as far as the institutional and OHR guidelines on how this process was played out. So adding to that, the communication to chairs and deans and other supervisors, I think letters went directly out, and working with HR on how to coordinate and message and let people know that these things are coming. I'm all for that. So that's really the gist of that process. And as I shared in Provost Council, in my mind, this is the floor. This is not the ceiling. And I've done Coupa analysis. I've advocated already to the new president that compensation and Coupa equity is of great importance, and I'm going to continue to advocate for that. Yes.
Just to follow up, I have 2 questions. Why was it different? Why was this instance different? Because the Office of the President said he wanted to do it that way.
Guidance from USG on here are the parameters. So normally, and in my experience, in the limited experience where these merit raises have come through, here's the institutional dollars that are granted, and the default is usually about 2%, right? And then it's given to chairs and deans to say, figure out how you want to distribute this, and that's about it, right? In this case, it was only the top 15% at the institution. And then from an equity, how do you define that other than annual evaluations, right? And then the average would be 2, with no one getting more than 4. So to maximize the number of people that would be impacted, we weren't doing 4% over here and 0.5% over here. It's a 2% for the top 15 in area.
And just to follow up, are you saying that you're going to work on having better communication about this in the future?
Yes.
Because that was the question people were hearing about.
Agreed.
This on Monday.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, my follow, as a harvest here, said, on Monday, I was like, what's this? So I was very surprised. The biggest thing is I understand the process is over, so I'm not really very concerned about that. It's my initial thought in the conversation with folks in my department that is a transparency, communication issue. Again, I think that's something that we need to work on. I know that you found out, so to say, very similar to what we found out. But I know these communication issues are something that I feel like has been a widespread problem for a while. So again, it was just like, these are more of the same. So that just, to stay that, it's simple, I know that we need to.
I hear you. I agree with you. We need to do better. And I'm committed to that.
It goes back to, you know, how can we feel better?
Yep.
Let's make us feel better.
Going along.
I don't wanna cut anything off, but we have a brief agenda, but we do have an agenda.
Yep. Can I just say one more?
Please do.
Okay. I don't want to end on a downer like that. I want to point out one more example. I'm going to start with the students, and we've talked about some pretty heavy things here. But I've got another example that's still baking out of philosophy. And it's a gen ed course that talks about technology and society. And I think it connects with faculty governance of content and perhaps what might be considered some controversial content, right? I want to point to this as an example of a course that's coming out of philosophy. It hasn't even hit UPC yet or Gen Ed Council or David's yet. But I do want to commend the fact that you're thinking about this because this is relevant, it's important, it's fun, it's cool, it's exciting. And it's also something that in their proposal, there might be one other place that's kind of sort of across the USG doing this. But it shows the relevance of philosophy and the importance of that discipline, but it's also applicable to, I would say, any major across the institution. How do you grapple with how is technology changing the world, and how do we resolve that? So I know we're about to get into ITS and Gen AI, right? I love the AI busters conversation, but I just want to point that out as a great work of our colleagues that are doing some new things, and maybe I'm biasing the process, right? When this comes up before UPC and the Faculty Senate. But I just want to pause for a moment. And that's just one example of the great work y'all are doing. Right? Everybody in here has that in their pocket they can point to and say, yeah, I'm Gen Ed Philosophy Tech Society. I'm doing something similar to that in my research, in my service, in my teaching. And I think that's really cool. So I just wanted to point that one out as just one example of what embodies the spirit of UWG and why we all are here and why we're all here doing this really tough work. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So September agenda is usually brief and today is no exception. We did have one item come in over the summer that we are asked to act on now. It is was sent to the executive committee, was sent to me, I sent it to the executive committee. And it's a resolution in support in recognition of interim President Manga's service. So it passed out of executive committee last week and bringing it to you all for consideration today as an action item, and as a representative of exec, Laura's gonna read it to you, and then we'll see if there's any discussion, and if not, we can proceed to a vote.
And so it's not my proposal, but as a member, I agreed to put it forth to you as a practice that we've done in the past couple of years. So it states that whereas Dr. Shwani Manga served as interim president of the University of West Georgia from August 2024 to July 2025. And whereas Dr. Manga immediately showed himself to be a humble servant leader who would walk alongside us as we transitioned to a more positive campus climate, Dr. Manga invested in relationships across campus that moved us in a more collaborative and constructive direction. The investments that Dr. Manga made in the University of West Georgia will continue to positively impact our culture in the years ahead. It's therefore resolved that the University of West Georgia's Faculty Senate, on behalf of the faculty, acknowledges, recognizes, celebrates, and extends its profound appreciation to Dr. Shwani Manga for his exceptional service as interim president and his invaluable contributions to campus culture, improving the campus climate, and enhancing the mutual relationships between faculty and staff at the university's leaders. So it is an action item. So it is something that we would need to vote on. So we can.
Yeah, so are there any questions or discussions, or would we like to move to a vote?
Okay. All right, so we definitely have quorum. So all in favor, if you want to raise your hand. Okay, and how about opposition? And abstention. Great, thank you.
All right, so I do have some important announcements, but I can defer those until the end of our agenda in the interest of time. I always want to give the opportunity to committee chairs. I know most committee, I don't think any committee has a chance to meet yet, but do any committee chairs? Would any of y'all like to add anything? Sal?
Just very briefly, I am serving as interim chair of the, let me figure out the name, Strategic and Fiscal Advisory Committee. And the members of the faculty, the senators who are currently here, if you give me a minute or two right up this meeting, just so that I can check in and look at the ag, see who you are. I think the only people that I don't know are Professor Stephanie Bellum and Professor Ron Colley. So wherever you are, just come, I'll come looking for you, come looking for me. I'd love to meet you and shake it.
Jason?
So nothing report from the new teaching and learning committee, so we're not TLA anymore, but we still do assessment. But please, like, your colleagues or yourself, if you hear things, of issues that would be important to us and within our purview. I'm Jason Swift, you can email me directly, if you see me on campus, stop me. But yeah, keep your ears open if there's something, that's concerns from your students, for you that involves us in terms of teaching and learning, reach out and we'll talk with you and work on it.
Bill? As with David Newton, I know he has a couple things he wants to bring up, so go ahead and turn the chair over to him.
Very brief, just quick help is now open. We're already getting a lot of submissions, which is wonderful. I know the GBC will be meeting in advance of the next Senate meeting, so a lot of them. Keep in mind, and please share with your programs and units that we do have some deadlines, in curriculum, anything that has to go to either the USG or the SATS review approval. We need to have those in by no later than the January 2nd, so that we can be on the agenda for the January 2nd. And then some other deadlines that are further along, but anything that needs to be approved here, it needs to be about the March meeting. When it comes to the Senate, we do have a little later time if it's just kind of directly learning outcomes and things like that. But anything that's really going to require review and approval done here, we need to have it by June. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Go ahead, ITS. Come on down.
I appreciate it, Dylan. Well, thank you for letting us participate. I wanted to make sure that we got a chance to kind of give everybody an overview of the strategic direction of what we're trying to do. Dr. Preston kind of gave you all the idea of the aspects of the financial, but essentially what we're doing is going from a on-prem type situation to a unified communication platform that's a cloud native service, which is going to allow us to do a number of different things. So in the telecom space, I know this has been how I would describe it as a jigsaw puzzle we're trying to put together over the past couple of years, because there's multiple different domains that telecom touches across campus. And then there was some USG mandates that were pushed down to us that we had to account for as well. But I think that we're at the point now where we architected a solution, and I brought my principal architect, Justin Sellers, our information operations director, to kind of help answer any questions. But this solution has been capturing all the use cases across campus. So again, from an ITS perspective, we're just trying to find the needs and opportunity in the telecom space to figure out how we can move forward all of these different features and needs across campus. So I asked Dylan, I shared this with Dylan in terms of kind of a definition of kind of where we define some of the main use cases in those areas where you all may fit in. I do believe that we've put out communication to the deans in your space to kind of verify some data. And so make sure that we're moving in the right direction in terms of the deployment across campus. So I'm hoping that this is something that maybe you can share out an email that you all can take a look at. But I do believe that the collection of the information is going to go through this week, I think, or next week. think it was today. Do today? Yeah, but anyways, once we collect that information back, we're gonna start coming up with our next phases of the plan. So initially, we, of course, moved over, ITS into the new platform, as well as, the provost's office to kind of test some different things and some different features. So we, kind of made some tweaks in that, and now we're ready to go into, the rest of phase one. And what phase one in the project is moving all existing lines into the new platform. So again, like Dr. Preston said, whatever you all need is what we're gonna do. So in terms of our recommendations, that's just from an ITS perspective. So don't get too much caught up in the recommendation from an ITS perspective. We are going out and actually capturing that as we engage with those different areas. Phase one, our goal is to kind of complete that by November. So in the coming weeks, we will be moving a lot of these telephone lines over to what was once Avaya into a Ring Central space, using our Teams interface as the primary interface for calling. But of course, those that still need handsets or headsets or whatever, we will have that type of equipment necessary as needed. Phase two, which will probably begin sometime after the break, we'll start addressing areas related to call center and then our emergency areas, so elevators, alarms, all of those type of things will be phase two, with the goal of completely coming off of Avaya sometime mid FY 26. Again, wanted to make ourselves available for any questions on the telecom part of it.
Yes, what is the justification that faculty need only internal communications, or that's the recommendation of faculty?
Well, in terms of the recommendation, the reason why we built that out of call data. So taking a look at call data and those assigned in terms of the number of calls that was made over a year, and then just general use case that we collected from the vendor that we're using in that space. So what they were saying, what their recommendation is a lot of communication from faculty to student is either handled through the LMS, email, or video conferencing like a Teams interface or something like that, as opposed to a traditional call up a telephone line. However, if a faculty needs a line and you need a line, we give you a line.
Do you think that there is a danger in telling students that your faculty member is not available by phone? Or that I can't put a phone number in my email signature and say you can contact me here?
Well, again, that's not a ITS decision. We don't, that's not a fighting the dog for us. So in your email signature, if you put an extension or a phone line, they can still call you. So if you just had an extension, they can call you. However,
would that require a departmental cost?
Yes. So the phone line, there is a cost associated that Dr. Preston mentioned earlier. But again, that's a VP or a dean decision in terms of your budget, but not in terms of the solution that we're architecting. The solution that we've architected is going to capture all use cases. So if you need a phone line to reach out to call students or to have them call you, we can certainly provision that.
Yeah, to be clear, I caught that as well, and my response was, do not put internal only. So assume that cell in that table doesn't exist, please. Every faculty member will have a phone number. And to the second part of your question, this is to avoid cost escalation. This is not going to push cost into departments and cut your budgets.
I actually have a personal request now, because a lot of this stuff is actually going to be via Wi-Fi, especially in. I have an office which is beautiful, and there are absolutely no circumstances but leave it. But it's a dead spot. Wi-Fi does not come into it at all.
Into your office.
In my office.
Okay.
And because this is going to be via Wi-Fi, I have a laptop that is not connected to the LAN. I absolutely need Wi-Fi, so if I have to wear a hat with the Wi-Fi.
That's actually a whole nother discussion, but yes, if you have issues with connectivity in your office space, that's something that needs to be reported to us in the form of a service request. Justin, I'm sure, can send somebody out, do some heat mapping and figure out how we can adjust that
In the service desk, I noticed that whenever I put in something in, it's always priority 3. Yep. Why? I mean, it tells me that, and priority 3, and then it lists as low, and, you know.
Yeah, that would be hard for me to answer without knowing any details of the issue.
It doesn't matter, anything.
Well, I would think anything that's classroom related and for in class should be a priority one that's affecting instruction. And then it kind of goes down from there. So, of course, in the executive space for president, both with all this, that would be our priority, but I would have to really have no little bit of the details, but I get it. That's kind of a. Anything else about telecom or any questions about that? The only other comment I would like to make in terms of the telecom space, and I know Dylan had brought this up in regards to as we transition. Again, this is another thing that we're trying to transform our telecom into something that's 2025 related. But we will be working with IFE to try to put together some guides and some tutorial information to kind of help you all understand how to make Teams calls and how to navigate that particular interface as we move forward. But again, it's going to be a process, but we will work with IFE to kind of give you that resource. Yes.
I'm embarrassed to have to ask this because I think that people just answered it several times. Okay, so we're not supposed to pay attention to that it says internal communication only because the extension only line will work to receive and send
We're all
call.
No, so extension line only, if you, and it's up in the document, and he'll share this out so you can get a little bit more detail. But extension line only means is that you can receive calls from the outside. So if a student wanted to call you at your desk, you can receive calls.
But you can't send.
But you couldn't call an outside line from your soft client or your in Teams.
So discipline specific needs for people trying to find me or call me.
They can call you off, the extension all day long.
No,
Yep.
fine. Okay.
Yep.
And
Sorry.
Yes.
let's remove that cell from the, because if you say, oh, I had this great grant opportunity, I was gonna get a $3 million grant, but I could call somebody to be the co-PI with me. Like, right, you're gonna be able to call out and receive in, 100%. Please, if you don't get anything from today, when you walk out of this room, you'll be able to call out and get calls in.
Okay, so I'm still confused. This is gonna change too then, right? Not just that one cell, but this.
Can we put mute on the video, please?
I'm shutting it down. I didn't see the last part, but yeah, in terms of when he does share that out at the bottom, in terms of the recommendation roles, that's from an ITS perspective. Okay, that's just from an ITS perspective. As we move through this, obviously that's going to change because we don't know everything that you all do. We're just trying to make sure that we have a solution that accounts for it. If that makes sense. So any other telecom questions?
Will it ever be able to call 911?
So we can, yes, you can dial 911, but if you have a extension only designation and it's on a mobile device like your laptop, you won't be able to use Teams to call 911. But if you have, and then also too on your mobile phone, if you have your Teams on your mobile phone and you need to dial 911, you need to dial it from your existing phone, so your mobile device itself.
I was thinking like, what if I'm in my office and I don't have my phone, because sometimes I forget it, and an emergency happens.
Now,
So there's nothing.
now, if you're in your office, each office will have a E911 designation. Correct? Yes. If you're in your office, there'll be an E911 designation. However, if you're moving across campus with your laptop, there is no physical designated space because you're moving around. We would have to use the GPS locators that's built into your cell phones. Any other questions about telecom? Okay, the second bullet point, there were some questions about email aliases. So we do have a policy for provisioning, aliases for emails if there is a need there. It's built into our, policy status. You go out to take a look at our user account policy. The only consideration that you may need to think is naming convention. So that naming convention just needs to be consistent with our current naming convention for your user account. However, we can deviate from that if necessary. And the process to request the email alias is just simply put in the service ticket, and that should be able to be done remotely. So that's a real pretty simple process there. But in terms of the evaluation part of it, you would request get what submit what you would want to that email alias to be, and then we would evaluate that based off of the naming convention and the opportunity of what's already there, what already may be there, and then what's available.
Or can you give us an example
So an example was, so like the
for
president.
yourself?
Yeah, I'm gonna say for the president. So obviously Dr. Johnson came in, but we already had a C. Johnson. So we had to be creative in that space so we can differentiate between Dr. Johnson from our COG and our president, Dr. Johnson, with the email alias, or a couple of different ones. So there was no miscommunication from those trying to reach. C. I think Dr. Johnson is C.M. Johnson, and then Dr. is C.K. Johnson. Okay, so. And then the last bullet point, I think we're in a good place now in terms of moving away from Zoom and D2L. We've completed all of the Teams integrations within D2L. There was a couple deans that reached out in terms of faculty that still may have had some trouble with Teams, but I worked with IFE and Mandy to reach directly out to those faculty and to get them understanding on how to use that. And I do believe you sent out some resources as well to instruct faculty on how to use Teams within D2L. But any questions on those last bullet points? Yes, sir.
My question is about Horsted, download speed. It's not exactly related to the Microsoft Teams integration, but.
You're talking about the download speed from D2L in general, or just you talking about right now, or changes?
Just right now, actually, one of our faculty, School of Communication, Film and Media, is having, and it may be a broader issue, is having issues with delays in terms of the time for students to upload content, submissions, and upload assignments. So he submitted some tickets, but I don't know how broad that issue is, but I wanted to raise it as a continuing issue up to this point in the semester.
So we anticipated this, and that's the reason why I brought Justin, because this has been an issue, because you've seen some of the communications that we put out in regards to the network maintenance. So there's been a series of troubleshooting steps that we've been going through to try to identify this issue. But Justin, you want to kind of tell them where we're at on that right now?
Yeah, we've had some slowness, I know, since the semester started. As far as the network is concerned, we got 8 tickets about it. I promise you, diligently looking into it, trying to resolve the issue. We're working with USG, the internet connection as well, just to see if make sure there's nothing going on there. Also working with all of our vendors, such as Palo Alto, which is our firewall, Drink, which is our internet. Working with them to try to resolve issues. Right now, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. So I apologize. I promise you, though, we're trying to get it resolved as quickly as possible. So
It makes you feel better that you know it's slow.
No, we definitely know it's slow. Trust me.
One of the good outcomes from all of this troubleshooting is we identified some faulty equipment that we were able to replace over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So we were able to get that done. And then also too, I think that the resources that we're being given from the system office in diagnosing this, I think we're going to come to some kind of resolution fairly quickly here because of how it's impacting campus. And I know it's intermittent. So there's times where it's good, and then all of a sudden times it's really, this shows a lot of congestion. And I don't want to just throw this out there, but I'm thinking it's on the PeachNet side of things is where all indication is right now, because we've looked at everything within our area, or our domain thing, and everything on our side looks really, really good. So the congestion part really is on on the USG side of things.
Just for those, PeachNet is our internet connection. So we get it through PeachNet for internet for our university.
Yeah, that's what provided by the state.
Steve Global is just a transport for us as far as connection to many other places, so we don't see PeachNet. Which all universities, by the way, use PeachNet.
Right, any other questions for us?
I do have a concern, we need to submit this as a ticket, but I think it's appropriate here because it's a concern about a system-wide approach, so I want multiple stakeholders. There have been a few instances when I've been in class, especially due to the slow download speeds, I might be like accessing, navigating files through downloads and have that open as I'm talking to the students. And I've noticed since our migration to this Microsoft system that now, like if I were to click on that little folder and go to my downloads, as I'm doing that, it will populate a list of everything I've accessed to OneDrive recently. Which may not sound bad, but maybe like it's anything that was an attachment. So it's like a student sitting with their SAR, and like there's a potential for the sharing of private information unintentionally. If you have a projector up and you're trying to navigate to just simply what you downloaded 2 seconds ago. And so I'm curious if there's a way as a system to have a control that says, I don't know, it changes maybe the view for an institution so that students in the classroom aren't seeing, oh, there's someone's SAR right up there. You know, like it's not auto-populating things that could be potentially sensitive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that you're navigating in Explorer, and you're navigating files and showing some of your recent
I
history.
think that push it and see that's great. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a global thing, so that's probably either on or off. I'm not sure if that would be something that we can restrict just for the classes.
I mean, I just think if people want to access what's on OneDrive, they're intentionally doing that, but I don't want that to auto-populate, but that shouldn't be the option that just displays automatically. I don't know, it just seems like a functionality issue. That's my opinion. I was uncomfortable. I had to kill the projector right away and go, oh my gosh, I don't, this student's left.
Any other questions or comments or concern?
Thank you. All right, folks, I do have a few announcements, but we're over time and I can use email, so I will email those to you. But I do want to say one thing. You know, I have made it no secret that I want a lot more discussion to happen in this room, so thank you. I think today was a good day. We did awesome today. I think we talked about some things that I know a lot of our colleagues really wanted a chance to talk about. So thank you all for doing that and look for an email from me. See you all next time.
Yeah.